The private dining room at the Monarch didn't smell like food. It smelled like money. Not new money, not desperate money, but the kind that whispers instead of shouts. Truffle oil clung to the air, heavy and indulgent. Soft jazz hummed through hidden speakers, low enough to be ignored, expensive enough to be noticed. The walls were paneled in dark walnut, the kind of wood that made you instinctively lower your voice, even if no one told you to. The lighting was dim and amber, carefully designed to flatter everyone who could afford to sit there. This was not a room for people who worried about prices. This was a room for people who expected someone else to take care of them. My sister Lauren sat at the head of the long table, perfectly centered beneath the chandelier, as if the room itself had been built around her. Her posture was flawless. Her smile was practiced. Her white blazer caught the warm light just right, giving her that effortless glow people mistake for confidence. She looked like a woman who believed she had arrived. Tonight was her celebration, her brand launch. That's what she kept calling it. A 2-page spread in a local lifestyle magazine. Nothing national, nothing major, but the way Lauren talked about it, you'd think Vogue had personally begged her for an interview. She leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine slowly, pausing just long enough between sentences to make sure everyone was listening. "This is just the beginning," she said, smiling as a few guests nodded enthusiastically. "The momentum is incredible. Once investors see this, everything changes." Around the table sat a carefully curated audience. A couple of minor investors who like to feel important, 2 local bloggers with large handbags and even larger opinions, friends of friends who had been invited not for who they were, but for who they might know. And then there was my family. My father, David, sat to Lauren's right, his expensive watch catching the light every time he gestured. He nodded along to everything she said, even when it contradicted something she'd claimed 5 minutes earlier. He had perfected the art of supportive silence. My mother, Susan, sat across from me. She wore a silk blouse and that familiar expression I knew all too well, the one she reserved for public performances of motherhood. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She scanned the table constantly, checking reactions, measuring admiration, cataloging approval. She wasn't celebrating Lauren. She was celebrating the reflection of herself in Lauren. And then there was me. I sat near the middle of the table, not close enough to be important, not far enough to be ignored. My black dress was simple, intentionally understated. I had learned long ago that drawing attention to myself only created expectations I didn't want to meet. I listened. I smiled when required. I nodded when appropriate. I clapped when everyone else clapped. It all felt automatic, like muscle memory. Lauren raised her glass for the 3rd time that night. "To growth," she said. "To bravery. To believing in yourself when no one else does." Everyone laughed lightly, glasses clinking in approval. I felt something tighten in my chest, but I ignored it. Then my mother stood up. She tapped her fork gently against her crystal champagne flute. The sound cut cleanly through the room. Instant silence. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Chairs shifted, heads turned. The room leaned in. My mother loved moments like this. She straightened her shoulders and smiled warmly at Lauren, the picture of maternal pride. "To my daughter," she began, her voice thick with emotion that sounded rehearsed but landed perfectly anyway. "To the bravest person in this family, the one who isn't afraid to chase big dreams, the one who dares to want more." She paused, letting the words settle. "Lauren, you inspire us." Applause erupted. Not wild applause, not chaotic applause, the polite, measured applause of people who understood the importance of appearing supportive. I clapped too. My hands moved together in a steady rhythm, detached from any real feeling. I watched my sister soak it in, her smile widening, her eyes shining just a little brighter. This was her moment, and she knew exactly how to hold it. Then, the waiter arrived. He moved quietly, professionally, holding a heavy leather folder under his arm. He did not approach my mother. He did not approach my father. He didn't even glance at Lauren. He walked straight toward me. I felt it before it happened, that subtle shift in the air, that instinctive tightening in my gut. He stopped at my side and placed the folder gently beside my water glass. The leather made a soft sound as it touched the table. Too soft, too final. I stared at it for a moment, not quite understanding. Then I opened it. $3,450. The number stared back at me in bold black ink. For a second, my mind refused to process it. This wasn't just a bill. It was an expectation, an assumption everyone else at the table had already reached without asking me. My mother leaned toward me, her breath carrying the faint scent of expensive Merlot. "Teacher salaries are stable, sweetie," she whispered, her hand resting on my arm like a reassuring weight. "Support your sister. It's the least you can do." The least. I looked down at her hand on my arm. Then I looked back at the folder. For a brief moment, years of conditioning surged forward, the urge to smooth things over, to avoid discomfort, to be the responsible one, the fixer, the buffer, the one who made sure nothing got awkward. I could already imagine the internal justification forming. It's just money. It's for family. You can handle it. I had used those thoughts so many times they felt like truth. But something was different. The number didn't scare me. What scared me was how normal this felt to them. I didn't say a word. I closed the folder slowly, placed my fingertips on the leather, and slid it across the table. It glided smoothly until it hit the stem of my mother's wine glass. Clink. The sound was sharp, too loud. Every head turned. Before anyone could speak, before the shock could fully register, I stood up. "I think the brand should pay for the launch," I said. My voice was calm, steady, loud enough to carry to the far end of the room. No anger, no apology, just a statement. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard the scrape of a chair. "Madison!" my mother hissed. "Sit down." I didn't. I kept walking. Past the host stand, past the coat check, through the heavy oak doors and into the cold night air. The wind hit my face hard, sharp enough to steal my breath. And for the first time all evening, I inhaled fully. The story does not end here. The consequences of this decision, the family's reaction, and Madison's transformation will continue. The next part of this story will come in the next episode. To be continued.